I didn't know this at the time, but did you know that PBS is supposed to cover both sides of every issue? They're supposed to give equal time. I was informed of this by Jeff, and he said, but I have no money, and I have no content. Why don't you go rent a studio and make a TV show, bring it over here, and I'll air it? I'd never thought of that. Didn't even know it was possible. But we did it, and it was a nightmare. Just the idea of editing tape to tape, which is this was 2001, not very long ago, was extremely difficult to deal with. Because if you didn't get it right, you were starting over. And it was a generation back. Anyway, very costly to put the first show together. Lots of barriers to entry. Our current TV program is running in 30-minute roundtables. We produce it at a fraction of the cost. It's entirely done digitally. And we decided we would create it as a web-based product. From September to November 2007, you can see the kind of hits and downloads on this television series. That tells me people care. When a TV show called What About the Water has 1,406 downloads with, 500 plus coming from something called Blip TV, you know there's information out there. We've got 2,345 downloads on a television show called Mergers and Acquisitions. How big is too big? You've got the balancing act, cutting-edge technology versus bleeding-edge technology, big picture issues. The one that always kills me is our open standards and oxymoron. Now, if that is not a very tight marketplace, I don't know what is. And in fact, when we had the planning session, we were saying, we're going to cover this. Are you kidding? But it's also been very successful. And on these CEO roundtables, you have industry professionals. So it's gentlemen like Lane, Curtis Burton, who's hiding in the back there, John Gibson from Paradigm now, but Halliburton before, Neville Henry, who's the Chief Exploration Officer for Buccaneer Resources, Mike Beharich from Apache, these kind of gentlemen appearing on these shows. And people want to watch them. Better yet, I started getting phone calls from cable stations all over the country that said they wanted to air it. So currently, and that's what I call the tail wagging the dog. This is an example of when you create pretty good programming inexpensively but put it together, they want it for the cable channels. So currently we're on all of these channels with World Energy Television. This is World Energy Magazine. Now, what's in this publication and what makes it different from the other industry magazines is it doesn't cover drilling tactics. It doesn't cover technology. This is about the business of energy. People can understand this magazine whether you're an engineer or not. And it comes down to speaking about our industry from the perspective not of the technology we're using, but of what we're actually doing, what we're accomplishing. 800 CEOs' editorials have been published in this magazine over the last 10 years. 200 politicians, numerous consultants, as one industry. It's not an oil and gas magazine. This is an energy magazine. So we've got pipeline guys. We've got engineers, geologists. You've got politicians in there from both sides. We're not discriminatory. We have energy ministers from around the world. And when you step out of the U.S., you lose that U.S.-centric point of view. And if you read the editorials from Al-Naimi, Ali bin Ibrahim Al-Naimi, the Saudi Arabian energy minister, you see a very different perspective on how this industry is going to provide the resources we need. My monthly publication, this is a magazine that has in it all of the topics that the CEOs are not allowed to write on. So in this magazine, we coined the phrase Putinocracy. We talked about the money missing from what Chavez claims as his production versus what they deposited in the central bank. We talk about, we had one copy of the publication where we had Uncle Sam pointing at you and saying, I want you to pay more taxes. And we were talking about who got the biggest windfall profit in this high-priced environment? Anybody want to guess? Come on, who do you think got the most profit at $90 oil? Or I guess back then it was 80, wasn't it? Most of the answers I get on that are ExxonMobil. However, if you just look at the sale of gasoline, and you look from 1972 or 3 forward to 2005, I think was the best data we could get, the industry has made over $600 billion on the sale of gasoline. That's a lot of money. But in the same period of time, the federal government collected $1.3 trillion. That's not fair. They didn't have the infrastructure in place. They collected more money than we did, and they're calling us up and saying we're doing price gouging. There was something the federal government could have done at that time. They weren't about to do it, but during the Hurricane Rita and Katrina, they had an opportunity. They could have lifted the tax for 2 weeks, which was something they could have done, and instead they did not. They called our congressman up. These are the types of things you'll find in the monthly. This is the kind of conversation we can have as an industry pointed outwardly. This is our website where you can get all this kind of stuff. And again, it's where do you find enough touch points with the general media? It never ceases to amaze me how many times the media is going through this looking for information. This is what I call the opportunity for our industry. Because on this side you have the corporate opportunity. This is when we have personal agendas that we want to push. We take advantage of what I call directed distribution, using all these tools that we've discussed, starting to push it out via email, push it out on the blogs, push it out directly to people you want to look at this. We no longer have to convince Walter Cronkite to cover something. We can generate this information ourselves. That leads to what I love to talk about, which is the viral distribution. Does anybody know what that is? I didn't know what it was. But viral distribution is when you get a joke in the mail, in your email, and you like it and you send it on to other people. The statistics on it are genuinely surprising. The number of jokes that make the full circle around everybody and back to the guy that originally sent it years later, or even months later, is incredible. This type of communication has become extremely popular, and it's something we can do. Simply by sending on the stuff you like, the things you've seen, it'll get picked up and people will see it. On top is that reversal. This is the industry's opportunity. If we're doing this, we're going to get this. The more people who are looking at stuff, remember that idea of more viewers, more voters? Well, as Hollywood starts to pick up on the fact that there is a demand for information as it relates to energy, you get this. Cable TV, the public video servers, the radio, and the general public starts to see what we're doing. We've just lifted the veil. So what should we be doing? Most of the leadership, and you can pick whatever time you want or whatever time base you want, is on its way toward retirement. That means that you guys are the next ones up. Whether which part of the gap you're on, you've got to take responsibility for this. You know how to use the tools. None of this stuff is foreign. We need to participate in this together. This isn't a case where we can say API will handle it. IPAA will do it. The Texas Alliance is all we need. That's gone. Now it's time for everyone to take individual responsibility for telling somebody that we need to generate more energy. Push that as the agenda. Anyway, that's what I had.